Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to another episode of Movie Goodness, where we examine life through cinema here on the KB Radio Network. How are we doing out there in podcast listening land? It is Martin Luther King Jr. weekend. It's a weekend. It's not. I know. The third Monday of January is always Martin Luther King Jr. Day, but it has grown into a weekend thing because you get a 3 day weekend, and it's a glorious thing. I love 3 day weekends. Uh, all us working men and women know how precious a 3 day weekend is. A 3 day weekend is like the holy grail, man. When you get a three, I don't know what it is. You can be off for a week, and it doesn't have the same effect as a 3 day weekend. Or maybe it's just me. It's something about a 3 day weekend that is special. It just feels different. You feel more rested. A whole week, being off a whole week, and I just recently uh came off of vacation during the Christmas holidays, and it just didn't have that same pop. Actually, I'm still trying to recover from it. It's just too long. It's too long of a break. But 3 days is like perfect for me, and it's nothing but an extra day off. But regardless, today we're here to talk about Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and along with that, we're gonna kind of dive into how Martin Luther King Jr. uh helped influence the way I view things, the way I approach things in life, as well as a review. Uh we're going to review the 2014 film Selma, which is directed by Ava DuVernay and stars David Oyelowo as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And so yeah, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and it is a day that is set aside to celebrate his birthday. Now, his birthday is on January the 15th, but instead of having the day bounce around every year, they settled on the third Monday of every January. And just so happened this year is the day after his birthday. I think next year it will actually fall on the 15th, on his actual birthday. So that should be interesting. Um, yeah, man. And I wanted to set this day aside, or this show aside, to talk about this day. Because there are a lot of people out there in the world who ask the question, why? you know, why are we having a day dedicated to this man? He wasn't a president, he wasn't a politician, he wasn't a, I don't know, somebody of privilege or anything. Like, definitely wasn't a privilege. So what makes this fella so special? Well, he is a special, or was a special human being. Um, he had his flaws, like any other human being on planet Earth, but he he helped guide this country, guide the black community to the rights that we share today. Even though we complain, we moan about a lot of stuff, which which rightfully so now, that we still haven't gotten equality in this country. Uh, but it's better than what it was when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. started, or helped start, the civil rights movement. The only problem I have when we talk about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights movement, whenever it's talked about as far as the civil rights era, around that time, and the only time it's discussed is the month of February. You don't hear about it any other time. You only hear about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. What he did. The sacrifices he had. It. I'm not saying they shouldn't talk about it, but there were so many more, that made the ultimate sacrifice, who put their lives and their family lives in jeopardy and cost their lives and their family lives for this fight for equality. And so I felt that if we're going to discuss that era, we need to talk about it all. We need to talk about Martin Luther King Jr. We need to talk about Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, yes, Rosa Parks, but also talk about the young lady who didn't give up a seat before that. I think it was a 15-year-old schoolgirl who was pregnant at the time. I think that's why they didn't use her as the spokes uh, lady for that time. But I think her name was Claudette. Oh, I can't remember her last name. Well, I would have known if it was taught better. But I did know. I know her first name was Claudette. But yeah, talk about her. Talk about everybody who contribute to the cause. And it's all good for Martin Luther King. I'm not trying to denigrate anything he did. Yes, he was the spokesman. I guess you could say the de facto leader of the movement, but there were so many moving pieces around that time and so many people contributing to the cause. And I just wish that when I was taught in school, that it wasn't just about Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I wish I would have learned more while I was in school. And I didn't learn until I got older and started reading for myself, learning for myself, or hearing my dad talk about it, because my dad came up around that era, of course, my dad and my mom. But my dad was real heavy on me learning about the history of black folks. And because history unlearned is history repeated, you ladies and gentlemen. Remember that. And so I was always knowledgeable of it, but it wasn't taught that in school. And I remember going to church when I was a youngster. Still do go, but I remember going to church when I was a youngster, and you know, for Black History Month, every year we would have a Black History program. They'll have skits. They'll have kids do bios of certain people throughout Black history, and every year they'll have one person at my church to do the "I Have a Dream" speech. And every year somebody would read the speech. It never came around in my turn. I don't know why. Maybe because of my speech impediments or something. I don't know. But I never got around to doing it. To be honest with you, around that time I didn't want to do it because when they handed you the paper, it was like three or four pages long. I can't remember. It was a long speech. And I'm like, man, I'm not gonna stand up there and read this and stumble over words and everything. I knew it was going to be horrible if I was to uh, read the speech, but I never got around to doing it. At least my turn. But there was a friend of mine who I went to school with, who I lost contact with over the years. As we got older, used to follow each other on Facebook, but I think he got off of Facebook. I don't know what happened with him, but it's been so long. But we were real good friends back then. But when you get older, you lose a lot of friends. But that's not the point. The point is, he was the only one that I know of that I can remember who did the speech one year and memorized it, and he didn't read it when we had our program, and he stood up there. Jamal was his name. He stood up there and he belted it out. And I mean, he's not only did he recite it, but he came with passion and fire with it. It was like Martin Luther King Jr.'s spirit was in that church that day. The way he was delivering his rendition of "I Have a Dream" speech. It was so powerful. And that was the first time I actually paid attention to what that speech was saying, what Dr. King was saying in that speech. And it stuck with me for all these years. Obviously, because I still remember Jamal standing up there doing the "I Have a Dream" speech. And I think, if memory serves, I could be wrong. I'm gonna have to fact check this on a later date, but I think they retired it after that. I don't think nobody else did it after that. Maybe one more year, I believe, and somebody else did it. And of course, he read it and it didn't have the same pop as when Jamal did it. I know I wasn't going to do it after that. How could I follow that? Nobody could follow that uh that performance, if you will. But yeah, man, the thing about that speech that always sticks out with me, especially now, is that when you sit down and think about it, for those of us who didn't live during that time, who wasn't alive during that time, who just read about it, heard about it, saw it on clips on YouTube or something, saw a documentary or even a movie about Dr. King or about the civil rights movement. When Dr. King gave that speech, it was truly a dream. All the things that he was talking about was was a dream. It was a fantasy, man. You know, little black boys and little black and little white boys playing together. You know, that was a dream. And I thought about when I grew where I grew up. I grew up in the suburbs. I grew up mainly around white folks. And so and so the kids that I was around were white. And I played with them, you know. Not all of them were on board with it, but I played with them. Some uh, I would consider acquaintances now. Uh, but yeah, we all knew each other. There was one boy, my friend. I known him since first grade. Once again, another one that we kind of lost touch with. Uh, we were like thick and thieves, thick as thieves rather. We were, and he was white and I was black. We were always hanging around each other for years. I think until we got to high school and we found out niche. And he went his way and I went mine, and it was no ill will. Like if we see each other now, we'll run and hug each other. I saw him a couple of years ago at Subway. So I went there for lunch one day, and he was sitting in there, and it had been so long we had walked past each other and we didn't acknowledge each other. But it wasn't because you know we had some ill will towards each other. We didn't recognize each other. It has been that long, and we literally grew up around the corner from each other. And I guess both of us kind of like when we walked past each other, it kind of dawned on us like, was that Kevin? Was that Mike? And we both turned around at the same time and just squinted. You know that look like I know you. Don't I know you? That look. And and he said, Kevin? And I was like, Mike? And we just ran, we hugged each other, in the middle of Subway. I know it was crazy for everybody. Everybody who was in there, like, what is going on? But yeah, man, that I, when I sit back and think about that, like that particular situation, where we are now, and back in 19, what was it, 55 when he gave that speech, or uh can't remember when exactly he gave that speech, but like around that time, around 1955 in the 50s. Uh that wouldn't have happened. We never would have been friends. We never would have hung out, went to the movies together. Because me and him used to go uh see different type of movies together. Well, it's a funny story, and I'm gonna get back to Dr. King. Uh, Me and him went to go see White Men Can't Jump together, and not only that, we went to go see Money Train together, and it wasn't planned that way. It just worked out that way. And the reason I bring that up because those two films star Wesley Snipes and Woody Harrelson, and black. Uh, in case you never saw my face, all of you who are listening, I'm about as dark complected as Wesley Snipes, and my friend Mike It was about it has the same complexion as Woody Harrison, you know. So it was like we were going to watch ourselves on screen, and the chemistry between Wesley Snipes and Woody Harrison in those films. Even you can go all the way back to Wildcats. You remember that movie with Goldie Hawn? They was in that movie together. You know, they're friends. You know, um, that's the relationship we had. You know, we had that same relationship. I miss Mike. Now talking about him, I gotta look him up. I know we were friends on Facebook, but he ain't on it as much. Gotta look that fella up. But anywho's, yeah, it that's what my mind go to when I think about the "I Have a Dream" speech, you know, and other things that he talked about, you know, and I thought about how powerful that speech is, and it still resonates to this day. That this was merely a dream, you know. That's how segregated this country was, and I put that in quotations around that time. And I'm putting that in quotation because this country is still segregated. It's still slick style segregated, you know, between races, between ethnicities. You know, blacks over here, whites over there, Hispanics over there, you know, Asians over here. It's everybody has their own little pocket of the world. It's like Animal Kingdom. You know, it's like watching a documentary on Discovery or something. You know, if you go to the Serengeti, lions travel with fellow lions. You know, everybody gazelles move with gazelles. It's rare that you see um a zebra just hanging out with a group of lions because that's not gonna turn out too well, you know. And human beings have turned into that. You know, we travel in prides. You know, we travel in packs, and it's sad because we're all the same. The only difference is the color. At least, uh, how can I put this? I'm. It just upsets me with racism. It really does. And I guess I have that view because, like I said, I grew up in the suburbs and I see how everybody moves. I see how white folks move. I see how black folks move. I see how all ethnic ethnicities move, you know, because I was around them all. And we all are the same. Honestly, we all are the same. We all do the same stupid stuff. We probably do it in a different fashion, but we do the same thing, you know? But we're too blind to see that. We're too stuck on color, and that's what it all comes down to. And it's still to this day, it resonates so hard. It as a black man, I cannot understand how you wake up in the morning and just hate an individual because they're black, not because what they did to you, not because what they said to you, not because how they treat you. It's just because they woke up black that day and you hate them. You just straight up hate them enough to they you want them dead. It's amazing. It's amazingly sad, but it's amazing. But I reference Dr. King when he talks about hate. When he tells us that the only thing that can drive out hate is love. Hate can't drive out hate. Only love can. And trust me, I know that's hard. I know it's hard to turn the other cheek because you have to think about how many cheeks you have. And I'm not talking about butt cheeks. I'm talking about how many cheeks you have because you got to turn your cheek with you. You got with your family, with your with your wife, you know, stuff like that. It is tough to turn the other cheek. But I've learned, and it took me a while to learn this, being humble has its rewards. You get to sit back and just watch. You know, it's nothing like sitting back and watching people uh crash and burn. Now, it's and I'm not talking about you have to revel in it, like you know, aha, look at you. No, you don't do that. That's not humble. That's the opposite of humble. But I mean, it does make you look at things like, okay, you see, now if you wouldn't have messed with me or messed over me, I probably could have helped you in this situation. But you you know, You don't have to say I told you so, or you don't have to say nah, boo boo, because the situation itself does it for you. You just sit back and just shake your head like, well, you know. But yeah, yeah, well, I ain't gonna lie. I do find some joy in that. I do, I do find a little joy in that. But I don't throw it in nobody's face. Yeah, I don't need to, because they'll look at me. A situation happened to me last year where somebody just, man, you want to talk about a rough situation where I was called everything but a child of God, and this per, the- this individual uh, basically told me, "You don't have to do nothing for me. I'm a grown man." Blah blah blah. Like, okay, I won't do nothing for you. No problem. I don't think it was 2 months later. Um, a situation happened with between somebody else in him, and the first person he run to was me. The first person he ran to, and I just stared at him. And God knows, I was geared up, ready. Like, nah, I ain't helping you. Like, no, I ain't helping you. But as he was talking to me, now, granted, when he first walked up to me with the complaining about the situation, I was like, yeah, you could. I'm gonna bust his bubble when he finished. I'm gonna let him finish, but I'm gonna bust his bubble. And during his little diatribe talking to me, something told me, eh, he he getting what he deserved for how he treated you, and somebody treated him the same way he treated me, and he seen it, and he actually said it. He actually said it, and that's what really convinced me to just let it go. And I told him, you know what, bro, the situation that we had, I let it go. You know, and I didn't let it go. And he was like, man, thank you. And he shook my hand and everything. We've been cool ever since. That brought me all the joy in the world, because the situation was so bad between me and him. I couldn't sleep at night. It was that bad. He had upset me that bad because I was falsely accused of something. You know, and I don't like being. I don't like. Don't assume that I feel this way, I'm or I said some type of thing, or I have this motive towards something. If you have any questions about me, I'm open enough that you can come up to me and talk to me. You don't have to make assumptions. And he based his whole argument off of assumption. And this been brewing in him for years. And he said that much for years. Like, why couldn't you just come and talk to me about it? But I digress. Anywho's, yeah, Martin Luther King Jr. Day. This finally came to fruition in 1983, I believe, when Ronald Reagan signed the holiday into law, and it has been observed ever since. Now, everybody wasn't on board for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. It was it wasn't a 50 state all of a sudden rallying behind this holiday. There were three states who didn't rock with the MLK Day: Arizona, Utah, and I believe New Hampshire were the three states that did not celebrate it. They do now. I think in New Hampshire they did observe it, but they called it Civil Rights Day, or they probably still do. And Utah, I believe, was the last state. Is Was it Utah? I think that was like in the early 2000s, like 2004 or 5 or something, when they started. But no, it was 2000. It was the year 2000. I remember that. It was the year 2000. That all 50 states finally came together and started celebrating or observing MLK Day. And not only here in the United States, it is a global thing. And not all countries, but a few. Canada observes MLK Day. Israel observes it. Japan observes it. I found that out last year. I did not know that Japan was MLK follower. It's weird. It was. It was kind of funny to me. In the Netherlands, also observe MLK Day. Now they also observe it as Civil Rights Day, but they do acknowledge Martin Luther King Jr. But that just goes to show you how much of an impact this man made on the world. And I'm gonna say this, and then we're gonna get into our review of Selma. The narrative that one man can't make a difference is a lie. Now there was a lot of people behind Martin Luther King Jr. He wasn't just a lone wolf in this. Like I was saying earlier, it was a lot of moving pieces involved in his rise to be what he is known as now. So I'm not saying that one man, it was just one man making a difference. Yeah, it was a lot, it was a team behind him. It was Coretta sticking by his side, even though, you know, you find out that he had some how can I put this kindly? Some little extracurricular activities going on in his life, but she still stuck by him. And that's the greatest example of the behind every great man is a great woman. That's the that's what my mind gravitates to when I hear that saying, Martin Luther King and Coretta Scott King. But one man can make a difference. Despite the fact he had a team behind him, he still had to have the courage enough, had the strength to do what he did, to stand for what he believed in, to fight for what was right. And I think about nowadays, right? Currently, present times, when it just seems like to me that a vast majority of black folks are sitting back waiting for a Martin Luther King to come around. They're waiting for a Malcolm X to come around. They're waiting for that one individual to come and fight the fight for us, because there's still a fight going on. This is not over. Contrary to popular belief now, because I've talked to people who says, what are we complaining about? We're good. You know, everything's over. Life is good. We're equal, especially after Obama was elected. Once Obama became president, everybody felt that, okay, black folks, y'all good. Y'all got to the point y'all elected a president, you know? No, it actually got worse when Obama got elected. But no, man, we still are fighting the fight. They're still fighting for voter rights. That's still a fight. it, it is mind-boggling, mind-boggling. And the idea that we are waiting for that one person to come along and lead the charge, maybe stop waiting. Maybe be that person. Be that Martin Luther King Jr. Be that Malcolm X. Be that I can't think of his name now. Lord have mercy. But be that change. You know, make that change. Like Michael Jackson said. You know, look at the man in the mirror. You know, be the change. You know, and I try. I really do. In my, not just this platform, but in life, I try to talk. I try every chance I get. I try to promote uh, fellow black folks to go vote, because for years a lot of black people did not vote, even though many had died, many were beaten, thrown in jail for this right to vote. And I get it. Trust me, I get it. It's frustrating to look at a ballot and not trust not one person on that ballot. Trust me, I understand, because they're all full of boo boo kitty. That's an actual fact. I don't care if it's a donkey or an elephant next to their name. They all are liars. You know, I get it, but just keep voting, keep fighting, keep expressing your voice. You know, people die for this, and that's what really changed me. Yeah, because at first I didn't vote. When I came old enough to vote, I didn't vote. But then I would complain. And I was talking to somebody one day who also didn't vote. And he was just going off about the voting, going off about politicians, not the voting, but he was going off about politicians and this person here, this person there. And I was on the fence with it because I wanted to vote. Actually, I can tell you which election it was. It was the uh, George Bush, Al Gore election with the hanging chads and all that. And he was talking about that and going back and forth. And I really was looking for a reason to vote. I really was. That's ultimately what I was getting into this discussion for. And I was trying to find a reason. And I was hoping he would give me that reason. And then I was like, well, who after after about 20, 30 minutes of talking to this fella, I asked him, well, who you voted for? You're like, oh, I don't vote. I'm like, what? And I wanted to call him stupid, but then it dawned on me, fool, you didn't vote either. And it clicked on like a switch. And, and from that moment on, I don't care if it's for the dog catcher, I'm going to vote. Because I was looking at this dude like he was a fool. And at the end of the day, I was as much as a fool as he was. You know, I was a hypocrite for thinking he was a complete idiot. And here I stand, I was doing the exact same thing. So that's what really changed it. And from there, that's when I got on my soapbox and was encouraging people to go vote. I go vote. My kids, I thank God that I left something in them. Not much, but I did give them that, and especially my youngest daughter, she's raring to vote. She just turned uh, 19, so last year was her first year she could vote. They didn't really have an election, but this year she could have for the midterms, but unfortunately she was in school, so we had missed the date for the mail-in. You want to talk about upset? Ooh, that girl was upset because she wanted to vote so bad. And I told her, we're definitely going to make sure that we don't miss any more. Because I mean, when I say upset, I've never seen that girl that upset. Uh, I thank God it wasn't at me, because she was literally fighting mad because she couldn't vote. Uh, but we definitely gonna get her in this next go around. But yeah, man. And other things as well, not just the voting thing. I just use that as an example. Um, but if you stand for something, if you don't stand for something, you fall for anything. That's something my mother told me when I was younger. She constantly used to tell me that, and that stuck with me. And that's pretty much the stance I take in life. Sometimes it works for the good. Most time it don't. Because I take these stance, and it's not popular. It my beliefs, my stance have cost me friends, have cost me family members, that don't speak to me. And I'm fine with it because that's my beliefs. And especially if I know I'm right. I know without a shadow of doubt that I'm right. With that being said, I also am knowledgeable enough to have an open mind to everything. If you're able to explain something in an intelligent manner, we can have an intelligent conversation, and I can see where I'm wrong. I will quickly change, and I will let you know that I was wrong. That's the rarity with me. I my mind can change, but you're gonna have to give me an intelligent reason. Don't just give me a reason. Oh, you're wrong. Well, why am I wrong? Oh, because I said so. Well, no, that ain't how it works. I give me an actual reason, you know, and we can work it out. I've flipped on a lot of things. You know, I am a I guess you could say I'm ashamed at a lot of things that I used to believe, that I used to rock with strongly now. I mean, my roots were planted. I wasn't moving. And as I got older, as I got a little wiser, I was able to move off of those issues. I was able to see it in a different light. But you have to be willing to open your mind up to learning. If you can have strong beliefs, you can stand strong on what you believe and what you feel in your heart, but you also have to keep an open mind because uh you're not you're not a genius. You don't know everything. Everybody everybody has been wrong about something. And in this case, in the cases that I'm hinting on, I was wrong. And I feel strongly that I was wrong. And in every opportunity, I would say, well, I was wrong. And I'm not going to tell you what it is because it's not, it's not important. But in any event, let's get into our review today. We're reviewing the 2014 or 2014, however you want to say it. I've always been confused about that. How do you say these years? I'm so confused because I've heard it said both ways. I guess both ways are right, but what's the proper terminology? Is it like this year? Is it 2023 or is it 2023? I think I don't know. Because I feel like when I say 2023, I feel like I'm saying it wrong. People look at you strange when you say 2000 and so I don't know. I don't know. I, Whatever. Y'all can let me know. Y'all can email the show. But anyway, Selma came out in 2014. Let's stick with that. And it was directed by Ava DuVernay. It was written by Paul Webb, and is based on the 1965 Selma to Montgomery voter rights marches. Um, this was across that bridge where, if you remember, the late John Williams, a long-standing state representative, I believe he was, or maybe he was a senator. I don't even remember now. I think he was a senator. But he passed away a couple of years ago. But that's where he was beaten half to death. He was a young man, of course, back then. And Martin Luther King Jr., along with many others, attempted to cross that bridge in a march, and they were met with, let's just say, a not so welcoming welcome. When they attempted to organize this march. But this film stars David Oyelowo as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who did a phenomenal job. I love David. I'm not going to attempt his last name again, but I love David in so many other films, and he was perfect as Dr. King in this film. Uh, the big knock I have, they didn't have the rights to his speeches, so they couldn't use his speeches, and that's why, like, at the end of the film, at one point in the film, when he was about to give the speech, they cut away and they go to, like, later on that day or the next day, and you're like, what happened? I wanted to hear the speech. I wanted to hear him give this speech, but I found out after I watched the movie that they didn't have the rights to his speeches, and I didn't even think that was a thing, you know. But yeah, apparently it is a thing. But yeah, he did an awesome job as Dr. King. You have Tom Witherspoon portraying President Lyndon B. Johnson. Tim Roth, the great Tim Roth, he played George Wallace. Um, Cameron Ego, she played Coretta Scott King, and you also had Common in here. Uh, Giovanni Ribisi was in here, Cuba Gooding Jr., and you also had Oprah Winfrey in the film. The film itself, I wasn't a huge fan of the film. I liked it, Don't get me wrong, I liked it, but it wasn't a, I don't know, a film that I would sit back and say, man, I can't wait to watch this again. I can't wait to show this to my kids. You know, we all went to go see that together. This is a film that will stand the test of time for one reason, and that is because this is the last film that I went to the theater to see with my parents all together. You know, my mother's, I still plan to take her to go see movies, but my father, who passed away a few years ago, this was the last film that I went to the theater to go see with him, along with the rest of my family. So this film does hold a special place in my heart for that reason. But as far as something that I will watch throughout time, it doesn't hold that spot. But it is what it is. Um, One of my biggest things is Oprah Winfrey. I did not enjoy her in this movie. It wasn't her performance per se. It was the fact that it was Oprah, and it took me out. Whenever she came on screen, all I saw was Oprah, not the character she was playing, but I saw her, and it just took me out the movie every time she would pop up. She didn't have a big role. Um, I think she played. Oh Lord, it was just on the tip of my tongue. I can't remember now, but yeah, it wasn't a huge role, but the times that she showed up on screen, it just took me out of the movie, kinda. And so I couldn't really gravitate to her performance. The rest of the film was decent. This is, I believe, the feature film debut or directorial debut for Ava DuVernay, as far as a feature film is concerned. I believe I'm right there, and it was all right. It was well directed, but I don't understand why there was this great need for Ava DuVernay in film. I didn't see where she just took off, because at this point, after the release of this film, everybody wanted her to direct everything. You know, they wanted her for Black Panther. She actually met with Marvel to direct Black Panther, but she decided not to direct it. But I will give her this: she is the one who suggested Ryan Coogler for Black Panther. You know, and she said if she can't direct it, she knows somebody who could. And I think her and Ryan Coogler either went to school together or something to that effect, but they knew each other, of course. And she suggested Ryan Coogler, and the rest, as they say, is history. There, good decision by her. Um, but A Wrinkle in Time was horrible. That Netflix series she did was great. You know, about the Central Park kids who went to jail for something they didn't do for raping that white woman. Um, yeah, that was awesome. She did good there. But aside from that, it really wasn't a. I'm not a big fan of any any other projects that she's done. Um, like I said, she's a decent director. This was done great. I would say it was great, but it's not like, oh man, this is an achievement in cinema. It wasn't none of that, but it was still good. This film is highlighted by the fact that they did showcase the fact that Martin Luther King Jr. was involved in some infidelity. You know, they did go into that. It wasn't a big plot point in the film. And to be honest with you, the reason I'm bringing this up is because of a knock, and I'm not knocking it because uh, they're bringing up his philandering. I'm knocking it because it had absolutely nothing to do with the movie. It had nothing to do with the movie. It was like it was thrown in there just to be thrown in there. You know, just like, oh yeah, we got this bit of information, let's put it in there. And it was only for one scene, but it was like, what was the point? You know, it didn't drive the story forward at all. actually at the point where they threw it in there, it kind of stopped the story, and it had to the real story had to be started back up again. I know they probably gonna explain the fact if you go back and listen to interviews or something, they're gonna say that they wanted to showcase all what Martin Luther King Jr. was dealing with at the time, because at what they showed in the film was that the FBI was had wiretaps and they recorded him with another woman and they sent it to Coretta, and Coretta had confronted him about it, and uh there was turmoil in the house and all this here, but he's still trying to fight the fight, put on fight the good fight, that stuff. Okay, fine, but we already knew, we already knew he was going through a lot. I just felt they just threw that in there just to be whatever. But it is what it is. Look, that's not the reason why I'm knocking this film, or at least knocking the grade down. But it is something that always bothered me when I when I watched it. Like, why is this in here? Now, I know it happened. It ain't like they lied, but it was just like, why is this in here? But anywho's, the film as a whole is well done. It is well put together. I enjoyed it. If it do come on again, ain't nothing else on, I will watch it. But it's nothing that I will seek out to watch. And that's basically where I was trying to get at. Selma from 2014. Technically it is 2014, but it came out wide in 2015 on the 50-year anniversary of the march. But they have it down for 2014. That's when it was released limited. It gets a letter grade of a B minus. Decent film, solid film. Probably one of the best films to feature Martin Luther King Jr. as a character in it. Aside from the miniseries that came out of years ago. I think it starred Paul Winfield as Dr. King. They used to show it every year, every year during Black History Month. I'll never forget it. I'm pretty sure everybody has seen it because it came on every year. It was like, my God. But this was probably one of the best depictions of Dr. King on film. So, yeah, man, we're coming up to the 60th anniversary of that march. Man, can you believe it? 60 years. Just keep that in perspective, people. We talk about the civil rights movement or the Jim Crow laws and all this here segregation in the South like it was hundreds of years ago. This just happened. This just happened. It was just generations ago. My parents went through this. My parents was alive during this time. So that should let you know. Actually, I have. Wait, how old is my sister? My oldest sister, I think she was born maybe 2 years after Dr. King died. And so, yeah, that's how close it was to now. I think I was born in 1979. So this it was about what, 12 years, 13 years. Um I was born about 12, 13 years after the death of Martin Luther King Jr. It wasn't that far apart. So, man, that's another thing, mind blowing. It's mind blowing. I remember thinking in school when I was younger, like, man, this happened so long ago. That's the way they talked about it. That's the way the teachers talked about it. But no, it wasn't that long ago. So, what are you doing this weekend, everybody? I know they have some parades. They do the Martin Luther King Jr. parades on that Monday. I know they do in around here. I don't know if every city do it. I think it's been a couple of years. I know because of COVID and all that, they didn't have it in 2020, of course. But no, they did have it in 2020 because that was before the shutdown. But last year, did they have it in 2021? That wasn't last year, by the way. But 2021, no, they didn't have it in 2021. Last year, I don't remember them having it. Pretty sure they're gonna have it this year, but that's beside the point. What are you doing? That's what's important. What are you doing to honor Dr. King on this holiday? I know it's not a day that you can, put up an MLK flag or something, or I don't know. I don't know what you would do in observance of MLK Day. I don't know if there's anything. Oh, what, a cookout? I guess you have a cookout. Might barbecue something. Who knows? But what are you doing? Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. Also, look me up on Twitter at KB Radio Network and on other social media platforms. Don't forget, everybody, don't forget about leaving the 5 stars and reviews and sharing the show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other platforms. I really do appreciate everybody who's continuing supporting this show. You are awesome. You are all awesome, man. I wish I could give you all big hugs in supporting me throughout these last 2 years, 3 years. How long I've been doing this? Yeah, 2 years. It's been fun. The fun is just beginning. So thank you all. Thank you. So everybody, till the next time, enjoy your 3-day weekend. Have some barbecue on me. Want you all to know that I love you. Continue to love one another. And until we speak again, you all be blessed.